Hello everyone, we're going to compile the C# version of Godot from source today, and this is going to be for Windows. Might take a look at Linux another time, but this will be the simplest because it's so unfortunately ubiquitous. So the first thing you're going to need is the .NET SDK. One of the first misleading things in this documentation is right here. The Godot 4, I should specify as well, is what we're going to build here. Godot 4 uses .NET 6, which is based on .NET Core, which is Microsoft's cross-platform .NET version. So once you download this, which you'll need to run it in the first place, you will get this. MS Build and NuGet are bundled up in that, and it's not really Mono anymore because you're using the .NET Core instead of Mono. We're going to start with getting just the different things that are required. So .NET 6 will be right here. That link on Godot's page will bring you there. This will bring you right here as well. For Windows, most of the time you're going to use 64-bit these days. That's just a straight up install file, so I'm not going to go through that. It's very straightforward. Next, you're going to need Visual Studio. Community is free if you just Google Visual Studio Community. You download the Visual Studio here. It will give you a setup file. And what that's going to do is install Video Studio Installer, which is this thing here. Now, I already have these installed, so you won't see this, but I'm going to go to Modify, just because that's going to bring up what you will see the first time you install this. All you need to compile Godot are C++ tools, and it won't matter if you choose desktop or game, because the basic compiler, which is this MSVC, is not particular to either one. It's just how Microsoft categorizes that for us. So let's pretend I haven't already got all this. This is all you absolutely need. You need the compiler and the Windows 10 SDK. So just select those two and anything else you may want if you are doing anything beyond compiling Godot, by all means, and then click Install. And once that's complete, you're going to have the compiling tools. So once that's complete, we also need Python and Git. I did actually uninstall these from my machine just because I figured may as well upgrade them anyway. So I'm going to start with Python. We have to add Python to the path. That just makes it so that you can execute this from any folder if you have a command prompt open. I am going to customize the installation. I will make sure to show what you do if you do not do this. So if you just want to click Next, I'll show how that will affect later in the tutorial. So all I'm going to change is the path. This is where it would install if you did not click Customize Installation. And this is AppData is a hidden folder, so if anytime you wanted to point to where your Python installation is or just go see what was installed, you got to navigate through users, your username, the AppData hidden folder, and all the way down here, which is interesting.
Blistering idiot.
So I'm going to just stick with straight up C Python, and then it'll put the version here, and then click Install. It'll ask for admin privileges, probably to add to the path. Okay. Now, just to show adding it to the path, that does become useful. If you just go type env, edit system environment variables, that's where you would do that. It'll bring this up, and environment variables, and then you can see here what it just did is it added Python, latest version. It added Python and the scripts, which is where it would put anything that was built. We're going to install Scons, which is the build tool Godot uses. That's going to get put in this scripts folder. So that's useful too. If you were doing the adding to the path manually, you'd want to keep those two in mind. So let's get that out of the way. And the other thing is Git. So Git, whatever, Windows, and then we're going to use 64-bit. All right, we're going to install this now. Bring it over here. So this is mostly straightforward as well. That's because I had a previous version. One thing I'm not sure if this is absolutely necessary, but I've been checking this to add a Git bash profile to the Windows terminal. That way, I think that will let you use most of the Git bash functions in a regular Windows terminal. I know some of them worked anyway, so either way, it's not critical, but most of this other stuff you can leave as is. Okay. All right, now let's get Godot. So to get the source of Godot, here is the repository. I'll put all these links in the description with descriptions. That way you don't have to try and get all this out of the video. So what we're going to do is open a command prompt. So normally you would use get bash for this, but since these work from the command prompt, I'm just going to go right to the Windows command prompt, and we're going to go get clone, which just all that really does is it goes to wherever you're pointing it to and copies down the files. So they're going to get clone and put in the website up here. I just put it in quotes. You don't always need the quotes, but it's a safe bet. And this is just going to copy all of the repository files into, since I started it in this just in the C drive, what it'll end up doing is it's going to create this Godot folder here. So you see right now, I deleted it before doing this video so we could do it from scratch, make sure everything's clean and works correctly. So now we have all of the repository downloaded. Okay, so let's clear that out. And now we're going to use Python to install Scons, which is the build tool that Godot uses. Scons is a Python package, so we're going to use Python to install that. Actually, first I'm going to see, this is a command to upgrade pip, pip is the tool that actually does the installing. That's usually not absolutely necessary, but they always recommend you update to the latest version of pip, so that's what that is. Now we're going to install Scons, so very similar. Pip install, so this is what pip is actually your installer. Now we put Scons as the package. Okay, so now that Scons is installed, something to keep in mind here, going back to those environment variables. So if I type Scons now, it's probably going to work. Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing here, of course, but it recognizes Scons. Now, the only reason it already recognizes Scons is because back here, it already added both Python, the root directory of Python, and this scripts directory. So if we go to that Python folder, here, and we can see in the scripts is where it actually puts the built Scons executable. So that's got to be in your path. So if you're by chance doing this, adding anything to the path yourself, or for whatever reason didn't get that scripts folder in there as well, make sure that's kosher before you move forward. Otherwise, Scons isn't going to work. But since it defaulted to adding both of those folders to the path, then we're good. Okay, so now we actually come to the part of building, and this is where we follow the documentation for the most part with a few caveats. So right here, there's some wrapper functions here that need to be built first. So in a sense, you need to build this twice. So it gives you the command here. So first I need to be in the Godot folder. So this is that folder. So now we're in the repository. So now it's going to find something to build. Try and keep all this on the same screen for you. So we're going to follow what we're doing up here. This is, we just have to set these flags. This monoglue equals no being the key one to do first. It needs to do that, and then we need to build again in order to get those wrapper functions taken care of. P is platform. I'm gonna write it out just so it's explicit. It will often detect windows, so you probably don't need this, but again, just so it's better to know what they are than to hope the machine does it for us. So okay, in module, mono enabled, and this is what makes the difference between compiling for C# versus just GDScript. We're enabling this module, and then we need this monoglue no. So it's automatically, you see it, I probably didn't see it, said it's automatically detecting how many cores. Some previous versions of Scons didn't necessarily do that. It would, you could put a -J and then the number of cores to set it to, so you can still override it with that if you want to, but otherwise it'll now actually detect it and use as many as you have. So we're just going to wait for this to complete. This first one's going to take a little time. I'll speed this up, obviously. All right, finally got that done. 12 minutes it took my computer. That's 11 cores it was using. So whatever that is. Okay, so now that we've done this first step, we've built it with monoglue set to no. The next step is to use the generated binary, which is the Godot editor itself. So you'll see here there's this new folder bin for binary. That's where you have the executables that were just built. You execute this. One is just a console version of the editor, which I'll use actually, but they're both the editor. You execute that file with the arguments shown here, and that generates the glue modules and wrapper functions that it's talking about. So I'm going to actually open a PowerShell editor here. If you hold Shift while you right click, you'll get this option, open PowerShell window here. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is because some of the commands, they use the dot, which points to the current directory, which the regular command prompt doesn't, so that'll just avoid some confusion. So before I do that though, this is where it gets a little misleading and out of order. If you take a look at this function and then we come down here, what it's basically telling you to do is build it with monoglue no, do this to generate the monoglue in this modules folder here. It'll generate those files, and then build it again with monoglue set to yes. That doesn't seem to be the whole story. So if we go down to the lower portion of the documentation on the data directory, this part particularly here, editor, the name of the data directory is always going to be GodotSharp, and it has the API and tools folder at least. So let's have a look at their build. This is just beta 6. You'll see GodotSharp in here with the API and tools, but we need to know how we get that in the compile from source version, which is what is not at all clear. So we do want to do that step, but we don't want to just do that step. If we follow this even further down here, we see we recommend using the build scripts. I'm going to just show where that link takes us. It looks like it takes us just to the actual scripts themselves, not how to use them. So someone can fill me in here if this is something I'm missing, but what I've found to work is go to modules in the repository, and then mono, down a little further here. And the README in the mono folder of the repository here actually shows you what to do. So you see right here reprised that very same instruction from the documentation. Use the Godot binary and then generate monoglue. But the stuff after that is different. So that's where the disconnect and confusion, at least for me, comes from. So we are going to follow that step, but from here so we don't get lost. So the Godot binary, I don't have it memorized. Like so. So we're going to go in the binary directory here, and Godot, etc., etc. Again, I'm using the console one just because I think that'll stop me from having to close the editor afterwards. No big deal either way. And this is just pointing where those files are going to go to, which is already in that directory structure. And it did actually pop the editor window up on my other monitor, but then just closed afterwards, so it's generated that. So what that's doing is it's actually updating some of the files in the modules monoglue folder. So if we were to follow the original documentation page, then it would have us just rebuild with monoglue set to yes after this. But it doesn't give us that folder with the GodotSharp stuff in it. So this is where this part right here comes in. This will do it, essentially, is the short answer. But down here, it has some NuGet packages, which I believe this is all just keeping the versions of the NuGet packages that Godot needs, keeping them straight. So if we go on here, we see this is the exact same command as right here, but with some extra stuff in it, which this comes after this.
Really should put the warnings before this stuff.
Anyway, so let's just go right to here. Now, the .NET command that you see here, that's also installed with the .NET 6 Source Development Kit SDK. So that's where you get that. That's again why we only need that for the requirements that the documentation mentions. So let's go ahead. Actually, this isn't I'm gonna name it Godot NuGet source just for logic. like if I actually try that, it's going to bulk at me because I already have it, but I'll just show that. Right, yeah, see, it's already been added to the list, so that's just, but that is the command. So you could also do NuGet remove if you wanted to play it. I think this is just like a placeholder or a container to hold the NuGet packages that Godot is going to go after. It's going to purge and do all sorts of stuff when you run this Python script. But you're going to want to make this here the NuGet source, whatever you created up here, or at least one that exists. So here, this is where PowerShell will be different. If you use this dot notation in a regular Windows command prompt, it's probably not going to work. So simple just to do it this way. This build assembly's Python file just comes with the repository, so it will be there. Output directory, so if you're sending the editor executable somewhere else that you want to keep that consistent here, basically this puts the GodotSharp folder in this bin directory, but bottom line is it needs to be where your executable is. And then we'll add this argument. In my case, just Godot NuGet source. And on the other monitor, of course, it spins this window up. All right, I sped that up a little bit, but it's 30 seconds, maybe less. So it'll just run that window with the Python script, and then it'll just return you to your command prompt. So what we've done now is create the GodotSharp directory. And there it is. So that's what's missing from if you just follow the directions straight up. So now here's the funny part. I'm pretty sure this will work just like it is, even if I don't recompile. I'm going to just go ahead and do that. Yep, so it's opening on my other monitor, blessed be. This is a little bit of a sneak peek at a battle system series I want to do, but this is just a completely random game that I've never heard of. Hey, not bad. Okay, so that seems to work without having to build it a second time. So your guess is as good as mine, as if to this additional step where it says to rebuild it with monoglue to yes. It doesn't, like I say, I don't know what's up with this documentation, but apparently this is all you need to do is build it the first time, generate the glue, and then add the GodotSharp directory. But let's follow the directions to the end, just to be sure, because maybe that'll crash for some reason I don't know of. Another annoyance I find, though, is that it will not regenerate these files, these executables, if you already have them. So if it sees it there, it doesn't overwrite the file. So if you do want to recompile, it doesn't actually do anything unless you delete these. So I will do so. And now I'll run the command it was asking for again. And the key difference, which would be the default anyway, monoglue, is yes. So this won't take as long because it's already built most of this stuff, but it's going to regenerate those executables. Okay, swell. So let's just make sure everything still works. Looks like it does. And never want to count my chickens before they hatch, so let's open it up. Alright, not bad. Let me watch Locke, this completely unknown character, walk around a little bit. Oh, that's interesting. Music, by the way, is from OC Remix, which is a really cool site with remixes, and you can post them in videos like these, so I'll link the song in the description as well, just in case anybody's curious. Yeah, it doesn't completely work yet. Alright, cool. So just to double triple check myself here. Yep, Godot 4 beta custom build. Nice.